Hi there, and welcome to another Tip Tuesday here at IndieSoft. My name is Keith, and today I'll be going over how to configure a read-only user for the first time. So read-only users, they're really beneficial to you and your customers as it gives your customers real-time access to your system without the ability to view other customers' gauges or make any configuration changes or any changes whatsoever to your system. So real powerful stuff. And so first I'm going to go over how to create that user, how to tie that user to a company and specific profile. Then we're going to have to set up a layout for them to see on their home view and their equipment view. And lastly, I'm going to go over some few quirks with our licensing and what could possibly happen and how to fix it. So let's go ahead and get started, and we'll jump into the profile manager here. And you will see that I have no read-only users currently configured. So let's go ahead and add one, and we're going to add a new read-only user right there. And we can give them credentials. And once they have credentials, you want to make sure that this profile type is no access and it stays as no access. Anytime you create a new user, let me repeat that. Anytime you create a new read-only user, you want to make sure that it always says no access. If it doesn't say no access, they will have some sort of full access to your system. So now that we have that super important no access setting set, we can give them an employee ID and press OK. And if we were to try out to close the profile manager now, we will get a pop-up saying that a default profile setting of no access was created and that this user must have at least one specific company or profile assigned to it in order to be valid. So let's go ahead and make sure that this user is valid by adding a company and profile type. You can do that on the bottom right hand side over here. You can scroll through. I like to use the Control F feature to find the company I'm looking for, and then I can drag that over. And now we have a read-only user tied to the Keith Inc. profile company, and we need to add a profile to this user, and we can drag over. I like to use the reports only when I create only users. That is a pretty good stock profile that we have set up in our system, and you can customize it as always right here on this right hand side. So read-only users, they can have many companies, so we can drag over as many as we'd like. So if we wanted to drag over AJ Medical, we could, or this one. And then you could even have different profiles for different companies. So like we have a power user in this one and an auditor in that one. It's kind of all whatever you would like to do. So I'm going to go ahead and clean this up a little bit so we can move on to, now we need to set up a layout view for the user to see when they log in. So the user is set up and ready to go. And now we can jump over to that layout builder over here. And you'll need to create a custom layout for yourself and what you would like them to see. You can make it custom to whatever you'd like. I've already created these two read-only template layouts, and I'm going to go and we're going to add that user to this read-only here. And we could do that by adding a new search name here. I'm going to give this a new name and call it Home View Read-Only. And you can uncheck the system-wide box and check this read-only client if you do not want everyone in your system to be able to view that view. In this video, I'm going to go ahead and leave it as system-wide just to make it simple. But if we were to leave it as unchecked, you would need to add a company filter, a profile filter, or a user filter for this user to see this view. So we're going to go ahead and check that system-wide, and you want to check that read-only client to allow them to have access. And as you can see here, if I have it as system-wide, this filter is not necessary. But if you don't have it as system-wide, you do have to have these user profiles or company filters. So we'll go ahead and do the same thing on the equipment side. So we can call this equipment view, and we'll check that read-only client here. It's very important. And now that that user has layout set up, we are ready to log in as that user. So if we can go ahead and we'll log out and we'll log in as that newly read-only user. And you'll see that I have a new read-only view here, and if we go to the equipment view, we have that equipment view there. Sometimes you'll see when you log in for the first time, this screen might be completely white. If you do have that somehow the equipment view just did not get selected. So all you have to do is right click on that white screen and select your view. And now we've logged in, I'm going to log out and we're going to go back into our system admin user, and I want to show you a quirk that just happened with our read-only user. So if we go back and go to this profile manager, you will see that this read-only user no longer exists as a read-only user. So this read-only user is no longer in that read-only list. They are now in that full client list. Why is that? So basically what happened here is I signed in with this read-only account using a full client license. And when in each user, they have a setting in their user location settings, we have a product type setting. So right now, if it's set on auto determine based on registration, it is going to take the license that I'm using to log in to the system and auto determine based on that license. So if I were to log in with a read-only license, this user would be pushed over to the read-only users. But if we want this read-only user to always be a read-only user, we can change this to IndySoft client read-only, press save and close, and you'll see that that user does get pushed over to the read-only selection list. And to prevent this in the future, it will never happen since it isn't on the auto determine. But if it were to stay on that auto determine, you would just need to make sure that you are logging in using that read-only license. And there, one last thing I'd like to show you before we go is I'm going to switch over to a different IndieSoft. So this is a different version. Oop, did not mean to do that. This is version 12.2.8. So if you're using a older version of our client, you will see when we add a user here, it doesn't give us the ability to add a read-only or a full client user. So we can add a user just like we would normally do, and I'm going to add the same type of user here. And we got to give them an employee name here. And you'll see that that user is added as a full client right here. And again, to move them over, we can right click on it, go to edit user location settings, application settings, and change that auto determine to a IndieSoft client read only, save and close, and now that user is now a full read only user. That is a very important setting, and we get probably the most requests on how to fix that. So that is how you can configure a read only user in your system and setting up a home and equipment view. If you have any more questions regarding this, please reach out to us at support@indiesoft.com. We are happy to help. I hope you enjoyed this Tip Tuesday, and I hope you learned something, and we'll see you next time.